Well, you probably realize that today's Broadway buzz is about the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, Cats. Welcome to the Palace Theater's Broadway Buzz, presented by Webster Bank. My name is Stuart Brown, founder of the 24/7 online Broadway radio station, soundsofbroadway.com. If you are looking for non-stop Broadway music, tune into soundsofbroadway.com, playing the best from off-Broadway, Broadway, and the London stage. I'll be your host for this podcast series. As I mentioned, for this edition of the Broadway Buzz, I'll be talking about the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical Cats, and that will be playing in the Palace Theater on Friday, March 3rd at 8 p.m. and Saturday, March 4th at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. For ticket information, go to the Palace website at palacetheaterct.org. Let me give you some information about Cats. It premiered on the London stage on May 11th, 1981. It played a total of 8,949 performances before closing on May 11th, 2002, the 21st anniversary of the opening. Cats held the record as London's longest-running musical in West End history from 1989, when it surpassed Jesus Christ Superstar, until October 8th, 2006, when it was surpassed by Les Miserables. It is currently the seventh longest-running show in British history. The Lion King is fast approaching the number, just a few performances away at 8,900 performances. The Stephen Schwartz musical Wicked is at a distant 6,200 performances. It'll take years, if then, to catch up to Cats and The Lion King. Cats debuted on Broadway on October 7th, 1982 at the Winter Garden Theater. And on July 19th, 1997, Cats overtook a chorus line to become the longest-running show in Broadway history with 6,138 performances. Cats closed on September 10th, 2000, after 7,485 performances. One actress, Marlene Danielle, performed in the entire production for its 18-year run on Broadway. Cats was finally surpassed by another Andrew Lloyd Webber, Phantom of the Opera, on January 9th, 2006, to become the longest-running musical in Broadway history. Cats is currently number 4 all-time. Again, the show Wicked is in the picture, fast approaching that number at 7,430. Book of Mormon is a distant 4,300 performances. These are the two active shows that are currently on the longest-running list. The show won most of the non-acting honors at the 1983 Tony Awards: Best Musical, Best Score, Best Direction, and Best Book. Interestingly, even though the poet T.S. Eliot died 18 years before the show even opened, he won 2 Tony Awards for Best Book and Best Lyrics. Anyone that has seen Cats knows it is a sung-through musical composed by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it is based on the 1939 poetry collection Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats by the poet T.S. Eliot, and that is a collection of light poetry about cats that Eliot had originally written for his godchildren in the 1930s. It tells the story of a tribe of cats called the Jellicles, and the night they made the Jellicle choice, but deciding which cat will ascend to Heaviside Layer and come back to a new life. The musical is unusual in its construction. Along with Eliot's poems, music and dance are the main focus of the show, at the expense of a traditional narrative structure. The bulk of the musical consists of the different contenders being introduced either by themselves or by other cats. Due to the rhythmic nature of Eliot's work, there had been previous attempts before Cats at setting his poems to music, though none of those attempts had been met with much critical or commercial success. John Sneelson, who is a musicologist, wrote of the poems, "They provided excellent material for musicalization, as Eliot's style in this collection is reminiscent of popular lyricists. The poet uses repeated catchphrase, strong hooks, steady rhythms, and outrageous attention-grabbing, witty rhymes, which are the ingredients of every well-crafted popular lyric." While most of the lyrics in Cats were taken from the Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, the director for the show, Trevor Nunn, and lyricist Richard Stilgar provided additional lyrics, namely for the opening number, Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats, and the most famous song from the show, and that is Memory. Andrew Lloyd Webber began setting Eliot's poems to music in 1977, and the compositions were first presented as a song cycle in 1980. You had the producer Cameron McIntosh then recruit Trevor Nunn and choreographer Gillian Lynn to turn the songs into a complete musical. Cats started the mega musical phenomenon. Think Les Mis, Phantom, Miss Saigon, establishing a global market for musical theater and directing the industry's focus to the big budget blockbusters as well as family and tourist friendly shows. The musical's profound but polarizing influence also reshaped the aesthetic, technology, and marketing for the medium. Mackintosh recruited Nunn, who was then the artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company, to direct Practical Cats, and Practical Cats was the original name of the show. And Nunn was an unusual choice, as he was considered very highbrow for musical theater. But Cameron Mackintosh felt that a pedigree director was needed to ensure that Valerie Elliott, the widow of T.S. Eliot, gave her approval to the project. After much persuasion, Trevor Nunn came on board and was joined by his colleagues Gillian Glynn and the costume and set designer John Napier. Trevor Nunn initially envisioned Practical Cats as a chamber piece for 5 actors and 2 pianos, which he felt would reflect Eliot's charming, slightly offbeat, mildly satiric view of late 1930s London. However, he relented to Andrew Lloyd Webber's more ambitious vision for the musical. Trevor Nunn was also convinced that for the musical to have the wild commercial appeal that the producers desired, it could not remain as a series of isolated numbers, but instead had to have a narrative through line. Therefore, he tasked himself with piecing the self-contained poems together into a story. An event called the Jellicle Ball was referenced by Eliot in the poem The Song of the Jellicles, while a cat version of heaven, known as the Heavenside Layer, was mentioned in one of the unpublished poems. Nunn expanded on these concepts by conceiving the Jellicle Ball as an annual ritual in which the cats vie to be chosen to ascend the Heaviside Layer, thus giving the characters a reason to gather and sing about themselves in the musical. He also added the element of rebirth as a play on the idea that cats have 9 lives. There are many elements of Cats I could talk about, but I really want to focus on dance. The show is regarded as one of the most challenging shows to dance in musical theater history. Dance plays a major role, as the original creative team had specifically set out to create England's first dance show. Before Cats, the industry-wide belief was that British dancers were inferior to their Broadway counterparts. The risky hiring of a British choreographer, Gillian Glynn, for a British dance musical was described by one historian as a vivid and marvelous gesture of transatlantic defiance. Making Lynn's job more challenging was the fact that the music in Cats is unceasing, and the majority of the cast remains on stage throughout nearly the entire show. The resulting choreography blends ballet, modern dance, jazz, tap, and interspersed with acrobatic displays. Lynn also trained the cast to evoke the movement, physicality, and behavior of actual cats. These feline traits were incorporated into the movement and choreography. Lynn considered the 13-minute Jellicle Ball dance to be the crux of the show, noting that in order to work as a dance-driven musical, Cats had to succeed there or die. She recalled the difficulty she faced in persuading Lloyd Webber to add the extended dance break, culminating in her and her dance crew having to dance all the parts in the Jellicle Ball to convince Andrew Lloyd Webber. Now, hindsight is always 20/20, but believe it or not, the development of Cats was plagued by financial troubles. The producer Cameron Mackintosh struggled to raise the £450,000 needed to stage the show in the West End. Major investors were skeptical of the show's premise and refused to back it. Andrew Lloyd Webber personally underwrote the musical and took out a second mortgage on his house for the down payment of the theater. He later recalled that if Cats had been a commercial failure, it would have left him in financial ruin. The remaining capital was eventually raised by small investments procured for 220 individuals through newspaper advertisements. After the musical became a massive hit, the rate of return for those investors, and this is where I say hindsight is 20/20, the estimated return rate was 3,500%. Too bad none of us invested in that show. Well, this concludes this episode of the Broadway Buzz. Remember, Cats will be playing at the Palace Theater on Friday, March 3rd at 8 p.m., Saturday, March 4th at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. For ticket information, go to the Palace website at palacetheaterct.org. You've been listening to the Palace Theater's Broadway Buzz, presented by Webster Bank. My name is Stuart Brown, founder of the 24/7 online Broadway radio station, soundsofbroadway.com. If you are looking for non-stop Broadway music, tune into soundsofbroadway.com, playing the best from off-Broadway, Broadway, and the London stage. Thank you for listening. I hope you will join me on our next podcast episode. Until then, stay safe, be well, and be informed with the Broadway Buzz.